Hi, and welcome back to Alt Baking Bootcamp. I'm your host, Mia Rigden, nutritionist, chef, and the founder of Rasa. Today, we are going to be making an heirloom tomato and pesto galette. So if you're not familiar with a galette is a traditional French tart. So it's like a rustic style. You know I love a rustic style, so you don't have to have everything perfect, but it's like a rustic style tart that can either be made savory or sweet. If you look up galettes, you might see lots of recipes for galettes filled with fruit, but today what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be making a nice spinach basil pesto, and then we've got these beautiful heirloom tomatoes that we'll be layering on top of the pesto to bake our galette. This recipe gives me major pizza vibes, but it's kind of like a more sophisticated French version of a pizza, and it's also entirely gluten-free. So I would serve this for brunch alongside maybe some like a beautiful egg dish or with a nice salad, roasted chicken. There's so many varieties, but it's a wonderful recipe for entertaining, and also the leftovers are fantastic in the fridge. So shall we get cooking? Okay, so I've got a handful of basil, which I'm just gonna throw into my blender here. You could use a food processor or a larger blender or a hand blender for this, I really like. And then we've got our spinach, you know, get that extra nutrition in where you can. I'm always looking for a way to add another veggie in the mix, so I love adding spinach here. We have got our pine nuts. I'm gonna get 1 clove of garlic. Some lemon. I'm gonna juice the whole lemon in here just because I like that acidity. And then I'm gonna generously salt this because we're not putting any cheese in the pesto, and so it's gonna need a little bit more salt. Generally, when you're making pesto, a traditional pesto recipe, it's got cheese in it, and that cheese is gonna lend some saltiness. And then I'm just gonna glug some olive oil in. You've got the exact recipe in the comments below if you wanna check that out, but when I make pesto, I just kinda make it by feel. Now we're ready to blend. All right, this looks good. Whenever you make pesto, give it a taste, adjust the seasoning. Maybe it needs a little more lemon, a little more salt, a little more garlic, whatever feels good for you. And then you can always just blend it again. It's super easy to do that, and you've got pesto. Or if you add too much liquid, just add more basil and spinach. It's really that simple. All right, so now we've got our pesto, and I'm just going to prep some of these tomatoes so that when our dough is ready, we can assemble everything right away. How beautiful are these tomatoes? I just love heirloom tomatoes. Having a serrated knife makes slicing tomatoes so much easier. It's unbelievable. It's really worth it if you don't have one. Also, you know, serrated knives are great for tomatoes and also bread. I love heirloom tomatoes because they're so beautiful. They've got such vibrant colors. You could, of course, use any tomatoes for this. You could use cherry tomatoes, whatever you have, but I just like love that color, the different colors of the tomatoes. As you see here, I have green tomatoes, I've got red tomatoes, I've got yellow, orange tomatoes, and I think that just makes for such a beautiful tart, and I love the flavor. This just screams summer to me. Now we've got our pesto prepped, our tomatoes cut. Let's make the dough and put it in the oven. So the first thing I'm gonna do is prepare the wet ingredients. So we're gonna crack 1 egg. And then we've got 2 tablespoons of white vinegar and 2 tablespoons of water, cold water. Whisking this together. Okay, that looks good. So now we've got 2 cups of gluten-free all-purpose flour. I'm just gonna add a little salt to this, season this, make sure that's mixed together. And then I'm going to add a cup of ghee. So the idea is to get every little morsel of flour coated with ghee. So I'm gonna use a pastry cutter here, and then it always just gets all over your hands, so then we get into that. So try and cut this in. So it should feel really crumbly. And then once all of the flour is incorporated with the ghee, we're going to add in the egg. All right, now I'm gonna mix the egg mixture into the dough and just give it a good. This is a really wet dough, so when we roll it out, you're really gonna have to flour the surface. So our dough is ready. I've just got a little extra gluten-free all-purpose flour that I'm gonna put on top of this plastic wrap right here, just so it doesn't get stuck. And then I'm gonna mound the dough on top, create a ball. And I'm gonna add a little bit more flour on top of this. And then I've got another piece of plastic wrap that I'm gonna put on top. Okay, and now this dough is really soft, so you don't even need to use a rolling pin. All right, so we're rolling this out to be like maybe ½ an inch or less thick. And you wanna make sure that the edges aren't too thick because we're gonna be rolling the edges over the tomato and pesto area, and you don't want to have too much crust in one bite. We've got our oven preheating to 350 degrees as well. All right, perfect. And don't worry if you see your dough going over the edges because you're gonna be folding this over the tomato and pesto mixture. So yeah, this looks perfect. So now let's assemble our galette. So we've got our pesto that we already made. I'm just gonna use a spoon to spread this evenly across the galette. And you're gonna wanna leave about ½ an inch to an inch of a border around here. I think it's easier to pour it in the center and then make circular motions out. All right, now we're gonna layer the tomatoes that we cut and some basil leaves on top. So, gosh, look how beautiful that is. Okay, so I'm gonna fold the edges here that we left of the dough over the tomato and pesto mixture. So the great thing about this is that it doesn't have to be perfect. And if you notice that something's breaking, you can just take a little piece of dough from here and patch it in over there. But as you can see, the form of this is starting to come together, and it's got that really chic French rustic vibe. So this is definitely an impress your friends situation. Also, no one would ever know that this is gluten-free. I find that these gluten-free all-purpose flours, we're using Bob's Red Mill today, but I find that they're really good and they substitute one-to-one for regular flour, AP flour, pretty well. The last thing we're gonna do is create a little egg wash for this. And what an egg wash is when we're literally just going to whisk an egg and then brush it along the edges of the crust. And what this is gonna do is it's gonna give it that nice brown golden sheen. So when we take it out of the oven, it's gonna look so good. So now I'm just gonna throw this in the oven, which is already set to 350 degrees. I'm gonna check it after about 30 minutes, but it should take somewhere between 30, 35, maybe a little bit closer to 40 minutes. You're gonna know when it's done when the crust is nice and golden brown, and that's when we're gonna take it out. Okay, so here you have it, our tomato galette. As you can see, it cut really nicely into slices. I think this would be the perfect thing to serve at an outdoor gathering. You could probably get around 10 slices out of this, and I would serve it with a big green salad and maybe a roast chicken. I think that's really elegant, simple, fun, perfect for warm summer weather and outdoor gatherings. All right, I'm just gonna try this here. So good. The crust is nice and flaky, and the pesto is so flavorful and pairs perfectly with these heirloom tomatoes. I cannot wait for you guys to try this recipe. Thank you so much for watching. I cannot wait to see what your outdoor gatherings look like this summer with this heirloom tomato and pesto galette. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.